On this episode of Talking Shop, we chatted with our first outside guest, Faisal Mehrban, the current founder of the Entangle protocol. Entangle is a protocol that Grant and I are particularly excited about, and we met Faisal through the Blockmates community, so inviting him on was a no-brainer. With a background in banking and finance law and investment banking, Faisal did the hard yards when he first dived into crypto back in 2017. He's a true student of the industry and is a perfect example of a solid professional operator in the Web3 space. He's now launched his own project in Entangle, and we have no doubt that there are big things coming. So we're really grateful he came on to chat with us about his own story, his thoughts on the future of Web3, and much more. I hope you enjoy it. We are live. So welcome to what will be the second edition of the Web3 Nomads Talking Shop podcast. It'd help if I immediately got the name right, wouldn't it? And today, joining Grant and me is Faisal, who I'll allow to introduce himself fully in just a second. But Faisal is a founder in the space of the Entangle protocol, is another really great mind that we wanted to talk to, especially in the early days of this podcast. Just to kind of bring in more minds and brains to talk about why we all love this space so much. And I'm sure he will do a far better job than me of introducing himself. So welcome, Faisal. How are you, man? And you want to tell us a little bit about your background and where you're from, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Alex and Grant. Nice to obviously connect again. So my background is I originally I graduated with a degree in law, and then I moved on to a master's in banking and finance law. And then I moved towards the investment banking space. In particular, I was interested in product structuring, structured products, securitization of assets, and I did my thesis in that area as well. And then after that, I during my time in investment banking, I found technology very interesting, so managed to lead a few fintech projects. I was a consultant to Credit Suisse, Barclays, etc., leading some large-scale global fintech programs. And I saw obviously a lot of benefits of how large companies like that deliver tech projects, but also some disadvantages during that time. And then during the journey in 2017, there was obviously a massive bull run and a rush towards buying crypto. So I kind of got caught up in that and invested a lot of money at the time, for me anyway. And obviously, market had crashed. But rather than going on to a bit of a sad state, I attended the Oxford University Blockchain Strategy Program. I was part of the first cohort. Obviously, universities like Oxford and Cambridge, etc., they were taking advantage of this gold rush at the time, of course, and offering courses. However, the benefit there was that I met a lot of founders, now fund managers, a lot of technical guys, and also speculators, investors, etc. So built up a really, really good network in 2017 via the course at Oxford University. And then from 2018, 2019, once I really researched the space and went in quite in depth from a research perspective, I managed my own fund. So it's a family and friends fund, which I managed, and we invested in DeFi infrastructure, oracles. Family was very happy with me, of course, because we exited quite well. So it was a very good experience, and the fund itself wasn't just a investment fund; it was participation. So participating in the networks, DeFi yield farming, staking, airdrops, testnets, etc. So there's a real variety of angles to interact with the blockchain communities and also the projects themselves. So it was a great learning experience. And then based on the back of that, through my years building up the network, investing, and having problems as DeFi, yield farming, and also realizing that liquidity is scarce in the space, and also there's a lack of tooling to allow exotic DeFi and also just general DeFi for every user or every chain. And then that gave birth to Entangle protocol, which of course we're working with Grant and the guys to raise awareness of the project.
Yeah, so was I suppose with regards to the whole Oxford thing, what's quite interesting. I was contacted by a guy quite recently, actually, and it seems as if the whole expansion into blockchain, cryptocurrency, DeFi, the whole landscape, I suppose the whole all-encompassing Web3 thing, that seems to have definitely begun to spin out, particularly in the UK. I think there's like 4 or 5 universities in some kind of cohort now that are actively pursuing and trying to kind of push that space forward, which is always a good thing, because I suppose if you look at it from, if you were actually still studying, that was many moons ago for myself now, but if those kind of courses were available, it's obviously a much more natural and like well-trodden path to progression into the space. If you want to actually, people, it usually becomes, you've come in because you like it. It's a kind of turns into some sort of hobby, if you will. But if there was like clear paths for people to actually enter the space, and sometimes friends and family think you're crazy for jumping into like an emerging industry, but if there was like a clear defined path, as I say, with these universities, I think that'll just onboard more and more people throughout the years with proper accreditation as well. I don't know if you've kind of kept up with what's happening in that space, but I suppose the kind of roundabout question is, do you kind of foresee the whole crypto and Web3 space becoming a much more standard career path, as opposed to, you'll get engineers or lawyers or people going into medicine? Do you think that over the next coming years, particularly in the UK, will become a more natural progression?
I think so, yes. I think there's so many different utilities and use cases for this technology, real utility and use cases. I think there's also a variety of not just crypto-esque professions that are born out of blockchain now. There's also private blockchain, private enterprises, governments, etc. And of course now the onrush and more emphasis on the central bank digital currency. So I think naturally these institutions that are going to be driving these technological changes and utilizing this technology, naturally the sort of normal route is that when a CV is applied, when somebody sends a CV in, they usually want some sort of academic background within that subject area or some type of expertise. And I think with computer science, obviously there's been a massive upturn in computer science degrees and people going into that area. And I think there'll be modules for blockchain specialization, etc. And I think that will really form a whole army of really well-educated young youth coming out of university, applying for jobs and taking the space in a further direction, in a positive direction.
Yeah, I thought it was, I can't remember what it was. It might have been like last year at some point, but I think on one of the Harvard exit exams for like one of the financial degrees, there was a question surrounding liquidity pools on Uniswap. And I was just thinking, these guys are usually at the forefront of what the emerging technology are. And if they're taking people through what that looks like on that ground level, it's amazing to me, because I look back at my degree and I think, well, if that was like an option, I'd have certainly been doing it, instead of talking about bloody stem cells and all that kind of shit.
I think even just taking it back to like your backstory there, Fit, is like it's quite an interesting route that you had into it, and more of how, I guess professional is the wrong word, but it's almost like if there's a way to do it the right way, then it certainly feels like you did it the right way, as far as like properly educating yourself and getting that initial interest, and then going, right, how can I pursue this? And I think for a lot of people that will have on the site and like surfing the job board and stuff, who maybe are fresh into blockchain technology, Web3, whatever we want to call it, and perhaps a little bit intimidated by how they could break into it themselves without going down that route, what advice would you give to them? Because as I think the three of us know, it can for sure be overwhelming, but equally rewarding once you've made that step, I suppose.
Yeah, I think, of course, they should attend any events near them, go reach out to people, speak to people in the space. I think there's always a benefit to partaking in the space with some small money, DeFi, yield farming, different types of activities, just to realize how to download a wallet, how to get involved. So yeah, I think there's so much educational material out there now as well, and a lot of courses, short form courses. So I think it's really, my advice would be just to get involved and get stuck in, and don't be afraid, like with anything. And with this industry, there's no doubt we're at a very, very early stage. I mean, even if you speak to, people, like I'm looking at my window now and I'm seeing loads of cars driving past, but I probably think 5%, 10% of those own crypto or probably engaging with crypto. Or so I think the space has got so much room to grow, and raising awareness and educational activities are great, and that's why I think yourself and Grant at Blockmates is doing a great job.
Yeah, I think of those 5 to 10%, you'd probably get another 5 to 10% of the 5 to 10% that truly understand that crypto isn't just buying Dogecoin on Coinbase or Binance. And when you start actually going down the rabbit hole, and looking at like some of the infrastructure products that the likes of yourselves at Entangle are building, those are the kind of things that if I do sit someone down or a friend comes to me and says, should I be doing this, should I be doing that, I'm just like, right, that's surface level stuff. That's small boy stuff. Like let me show you what's actually happening in the industry. And as soon as they see it, it's just like, oh god. And then it clicks and you can kind of see it, and they're like, you can do what? Like, it's just opening up kind of financial products that to anyone, anywhere, in a permissionless fashion that is completely, in the regular world, it's completely siloed off to the kind of few and not the many. And I think that's the kind of point that, particularly now with everything going on, is difficult to get across. But I think we just need to kind of keep banging the drum effectively of that message. And I suppose it's just getting out there and showing people what's actually being built, as opposed to the next Doge Elon moon coin on Coinbase effectively.
Yeah, so some of the names were just beyond ridiculous, but I think what fascinated me most about crypto at the beginning was DAI and MakerDAO, and it was just like you can deposit Ethereum as collateral, borrow this stable coin, go and speculate, go and trade, or whatever you want to do with it. And I thought, in the traditional finance world, which I was quite obviously deeply involved with, those type of collateralized loan options are really available to, like you just said, Ron, for the more privileged and slightly higher banded value, those with private bank accounts, etc., private banks. And they're not really available to everybody. So I think this technology does open up those types of possibilities, and I really sort of drew inspiration from that. And of course, even Entangle, some of it, the design aspect of Entangle, does lean on those classic grassroots crypto concepts, which will be here even in 10, 15 years. The sort of meme coins and all those funny dog names, they'll die out inevitably.
It's the hardest sell ever, isn't it? Like, naming no names, but one of my mates who's completely detached from this. In the summer, there was a particular coin that launched, and when I explained the concept of it to him, he just was bad laughing down the phone to me, and he said, like, even if this thing is the biggest money maker ever, he's like, this is why I can't take this industry seriously. And I do, like, I can understand that viewpoint as well, that if that's all that's presented to you, that it would be quite hard to get your head around. It's quite hard to explain what I mean here without naming the exact token I'm talking about. But it is. I mean, it's an interesting point, but I suppose that's maybe the perfect segue into Entangle, Faisal. And obviously, we won't go too deep into it, but do you want to tell people what it is that Entangle is fundamentally, and what it is that, with your background, what you're hoping to achieve, and with clearly the passion and view that you have for the future proofing of this space?
Yeah, I think with Entangle, it's akin to traditional finance. Before you had these banking applications that were in silos, and now you have an open banking solution where on one application you can access different funds and products from different banks. So I think with DeFi being launched in silo, a lot of the motivations for doing that were, one, people were not able to launch on multi-chains because their protocols were only they wanted to launch on one protocol, or technically they were only able to launch on one protocol. Or alternatively, people were more focused on getting the product out, getting the token out, raising funding, etc. So what's happened for a variety of reasons is that DeFi is quite fragmented. So what Entangle aims to do is that it's like be the DeFi router. So you can route liquidity, you can provide liquidity on any chain, on any protocol via Entangle. And what you get as your receipt is a synthetic token, a synthetic asset, which represents your share of the liquidity on the other chain. And you earn rewards, obviously, by providing liquidity in crypto, and then your synthetic asset accrues reward in line with the actual asset on the other chain. So in essence, users don't need to flick around with wallets and switch wallets, install networks, etc. They can just provide liquidity to any chain, and what they're getting is a synthetic asset which goes up in value over time as long as the original LP or the original yield-bearing vault is also accruing value. And then what the Entangle further introduces is capital efficiency. So now you have protocols with actual liquidity, and you have these users with synthetic tokens that are representing this liquidity. They're all sharing reward, or they're all benefiting in a way. However, how do we make this liquidity sticky? And I think that's one huge problem in crypto, is when there's a massive price downfall, or there's an opportunity, or I was going to say shit goes crazy, but it's a bit of an easy going podcast anyway. So when stuff goes crazy, people tend to liquidate their positions, and in the end, these protocols suffer, because without liquidity is the blood, is the lifeline of this entire ecosystem. Even if you're a bank, even if you're even if you're a country, if you don't have money in your treasury, you can't do anything. So crypto needs money. And what we're trying to do is basically make that money accessible for these crypto protocols, and then not only accessible, but also sticky. And then we offer various things that a user can do on his synthetic asset. One, he can borrow dollar against it. It's now essentially a yield-bearing synthetic asset which you can borrow against. Or he can give it as liquidity for further use cases, like some of the more exotic perpetual exchanges and things that we're seeing. Some really exciting stuff which has really picked up since this whole recent incident, of course, people moving towards decentralized exchanges and trading, etc. So we're trying to create innovative ways to boost liquidity and also make it sticky with Entangle, because I think sticky liquidity is key. The liquidity needs to stay in order for crypto to be successful.
Yeah, I've said a million times that the projects that seek to solve the liquidity issue are gonna, they're gonna do extremely well. Don't quote me on that, but it's the biggest issue in the industry now. So projects that are looking to solve these things, and I suppose for people who are a little bit more high level and just coming into the space, who might be listening to that's like one of the most exciting things about the industry for me. It's because you're such, I know it's like a bit of a meme to say like it's still early, but the fact is it's such an early industry that there are all these issues. But if you look at the issues as just like a product waiting to be solved and a project waiting to solve them effectively, that's kind of what's exciting about it to me, because it's like we've just all headed to the west, or we're all gonna dig for this gold, but you need the infrastructure in place to actually be able to provide like the all that kind of possibility to be realized effectively. And there's people just building stuff like with Entangle, that's people, as you say, all these people driving past you, Faisal, it's just, if you were to tell them, it'd blow their mind, but they're just completely unaware of it, because as I say, that's the only times we get the headlines is if SBF destroys $20 billion overnight, or Doge moves up 100% because Elon Musk's tweeted.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like touching back on that subject, I think it's obviously a big shame, and I think that the space does need to clear itself of bad actors. Let's face it. It's the problem is that we do have communities that are very much speculative people, and they want to speculate without educating. And if you speculate with education, the chances are that you improve the chances of success of your speculation. And if you speculate without any ground knowledge, then you really are taking stabs in the dark. And I feel, of course, it's a very, very sad event and very unfortunate, but it does open up the path for, you know, sincere actors to come into the space, number one. And we've had an incredible journey ourselves, even now we're raising funds, etc. It's not easy because, you know, there's certain actors in the space that want to incubate projects and do certain things and you know, lure retail investors to come in and pump and dump, etc. So those are the kind of things that obviously we're, you know, very transparent as a team, and of course together we're raising awareness, and it's the right people will eventually make this space correct, and it does open up like a low base effect in mathematics. I think there'll be a wave of opportunity after this. So I think we're, you know, it's difficult times for us all, but we're as confident as ever, you know, and we're just going to continue to build during this dark storm.
That's good, man. It's really positive to hear. And
Al's been having a bit of a meltdown this week.
yeah, I have. It's been a tough one. And for everyone listening, at the time of recording this, we're still very much in the eye of the FTX storm. So it would be silly of us to think that we could have not touched on it somehow. But I am going to use that as almost like a bit of positivity to cling on to, and which is the entire reason that we do this podcast and are building this site, is the right people are still coming to work in this space, right? And for me, all of the right reasons that we're trying to shout about why it's so great to work within cryptocurrency is probably testament to even the three of us on this call now, based in different locations across the world. And I think what I wanted to ask you, Faisal, as a founder, is how have you found that the flexibility has helped you build out a project team, knowing that you can comfortably have people effectively do a job and they can be anywhere at any time, as long as you're able to kind of find the right skills?
Absolutely. I think it's difficult, but it's also amazing once you get it right. Yeah. Firstly, I think really good talent is very, very hard to find in this space, in particular development talent and technical talent. So, and in a project like Entangle, for example, and I also advise other projects very closely, and founding advisor to a GameFi project. I think you need to find people and developers in particular that are, you know, part of the team and also feel like they want ownership of this project, because you do get a lot of mercenary people in the space wanting to come in and then just work for a couple of months. And then, you know, even just a couple of months ago, we recruited a couple of more developers, went through an extensive, I was telling Grant actually, you know, we were interviewing over like 60, 70 people to get another developer in. So yes, but once you get it right, the fact that, you know, you can have a distributed workforce all across the world. So we have, so, you know, we've suffered obviously a lot, you know, of you know, issues during this journey, but, you know, touch wood, we've come through. So we had the geopolitical crisis, of course, with the Ukraine and Russia situation. We had some colleagues in Ukraine, some in Russia, and we had to move them out very, very early. I sort of thankfully foresaw that there's going to be some real heavy movements on that front from a geopolitical perspective. So we got them out. We relocated them to Dubai and Bali, etc. And then we have colleagues in America at the moment, in San Francisco and Argentina, Brazil. Our UX UI designers are. So we have one girl from India. So the fact that we can coordinate everything and work on a project, everyone's really passionate, gets up in the mornings, happy to do and build this protocol. It's actually fantastic, and it's not really possible in every other industry. It's because those industries have been formed on people coming to work in a uniformed way, sitting on the table, and you have this hierarchical structure of reporting. And just to give you a very quick example, I know I'm hogging the microphone a little bit here, sorry guys. So
it's good. It's good.
So like when I was at these institutions, these investment banks, and we were doing change or a technological change, etc. Sometimes, even though I was leading the program, etc., but on certain things I had to get a lot of sign-offs. And sign-offs, okay, for example, was impacting a back-end software in Switzerland for Credit Suisse, for example, or somewhere here or there. And then you have product owners of those systems, and sometimes it would take like 2 or 3 weeks to get something very small signed off. And what that will lead to was massive inefficiencies in delivering technology and change. Some of the things that we've pivoted and delivered on Entangle, and Grant's been quite close with us through the journey, and we share ideas, and sometimes we decide to implement certain tweaks and changes within a day. And I think that flexibility and that ability to pivot is something that really empowers crypto. And if it's used properly, you can build things of magnitude in very, very small time. Of course, with all the testing and the safety behind it, but you can build very quickly, which is very, very key.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what drove me a little bit insane, like the whole bureaucracy and putting a different face on to go into work every day back in like a traditional job and things like that. And as you were saying, how quickly you can pivot in this industry, and you kind of need to as well, because as I say, it's an emerging industry, and a lot of it is down to who's building the best product and who's capturing as many people's attention at the same time. So I suppose that is the complete beauty of it, particularly if you're a builder or creator, or I don't know, it seems like if you're involved like in this industry, you seem to wear many hats at once, and you also kind of feel like once you have contributed something, that it's actually going to be worthwhile. You know, if you're in a traditional job, for example, where then, as you said, there might be 8 or 9, 10 layers of hierarchy, and imagine if you're coming in on a graduate job and you suggest something to like one of the top dogs there, it's just you getting kind of laughed out the room. And it's like a big cruise ship trying to turn, like opposed to a speedboat. And I think, as I say, as soon as I started working in the industry, it was just like it's just a perfect fit. It just drive me insane back in the old job. The bureaucracy of it all is just complete pain in the arse.
I agree, and as a leader of the project, like you said, you have to wear multiple hats. Sometimes you're a motivational speaker, you have to motivate everybody. Sometimes, you're kind of like, and it's like a family as well. The real benefit is that, you especially when you establish the team over like 6, 8, 10, 12 months, you get to know each other, the strengths and weaknesses. And however, at the same time, even though there's that lack of pivoting, etc., in the traditional technology world or large institutions, the one thing that it does give you, and I think it's very important for me anyway, and it's really helped me shape up Entangle, is the fact that you know how to deliver a project, organization, certain skills that you pick up in terms of delivery, what delivery method you're going to go for, whether you're using Agile, which is how you work anyway, daily sprints. And I think some of those, they might sound like, oh, well, anybody can just organize a project, but no, those daily stand-ups, those sprints, organizing the technical plan, those type of things, I think you do need that experience, because at the end of the day, you're building something, but it's mostly technological in crypto. And I think in order to build something significant, not like a very quick NFT marketplace or a dog token that you can probably do in 15 minutes with a smart contract, like a serious vehicle, then you need that project management, program management expertise. And that's why. And also one more thing that you need is, from a TradFi perspective, is revenue modeling. So a lot of these projects have launched before or previously anyway. I think there's a lot more emphasis on it now moving forward, is the lack of revenue modeling. So you don't know, okay, you have 2 or 3 products that you've got, yield farms or whatever it may be, but no one's really previously anyway is looked at where the revenue is coming from on their protocol. So which vault or which product is providing revenue, where that revenue then goes, what happens to that revenue, and because you have continuous ongoing costs as well. So once you launch the project, you don't just leave it there, right? And I think the fact that if you revenue model, then you leave enough incentive for the program and the project and the people to earn a living and continue working on it, whilst they wait for their tokens and to realize the real fruit over a period of time. Of course, that's the end goal, isn't it? To make it really successful and make your equity or your token value go very high and live a good life. But before you get there, you have to have years of hard work, even post a project launch. So I think with TradFi and modeling and financial expertise, I think that really helps us. So we know there's 3 dApps, where the revenue is coming from, what happens to it, how much we're buying back and burning, what we're giving to Entangle stakers, how we're distributing the revenue model, how much we're going to need for the team to continue working on this. So I think those things are very, very key. And you can't just have a pure, you need to be a bit of a mudblood, basically, I think, to succeed in crypto.
I like that.
Well, cool. I know you've got a hard stop in a minute, but just one thing. I know we've spoke about the hiring process previously. Where, from your perspective, where are immediate talent shortages? Is it across the board, or is it siloed to specific tech needs? Or
honestly, it's really distributed, the problem. So copywriting is very, very difficult. Ron, I mean, me and you clicked straight away. When I saw your article, hands down, I just thought, this guy's understood it immediately. And it was great. And it really, really helped us. It got some traction. But the amount of copywriters I've been through to find you and get to you was quite a high number. So I think even never mind the interview. So I think copywriting, understanding the space is very, very key. I think UX UI design, proper UX UI design, understanding ease of use, because the whole goal of crypto is in order for mass adoption to occur, we need user-friendly interfaces, essentially.
Yeah.
So you need that mind that understands, and again, I think some of the banking apps that have been built in the traditional world are fantastic. If you look at Starling Bank or some of these
Monzo
UK
or something
banks,
like that,
right? So we need some of those minds to come into crypto to build those types of UIs and UXs. And then I think, of course, de facto standard, there's a technology developer shortage. What we tended to find was a lot of CVs, and they were overstating some of the technology experience that they had, and we had to dig deep. So our tech guys, my tech seniors, the CTOs, etc., they have some tasks that we get every interviewee to sort of go through, some basic coding, some basic questions, etc. And you'd be very, very surprised at how many fail at that first hurdle. And then, of course, marketing, I think also it's marketing managers, marketing, understanding crypto marketing, because it works completely differently to selling Coca-Cola bottles, right, to the public.
Yeah.
You're getting investors to put money into buying a token that they physically, tangibly can't touch. So I think that requires a very special type of marketing skill. So those are shortages across the board, essentially.
Yeah, without going too far down that rabbit hole, with less than 60 seconds left, the difference of understanding between hype and actual effective marketing and communications in this space, I think, is severely lacking. But again, I'll nip it there. What I would want to finish on is, because I think what you said there, Fez, is a really good point, is what do you think we need to be doing as kind of the good guys in this space to make sure that the right people do continue to come and join us? Because really that's the only way that this is going to, as you said, mass adoption is going to continue. What would you kind of closing statement be on that? Where do you think?
Yeah, no worries. I've just messaged them. We've got a couple of minutes. So I think this is a very key point. So I think what needs to happen is that we need to define a standard between us all on what is actually a good project, right?
Yeah.
So we need to actually look out for the speculators in the space. Aside from education, that's very, very key. But believe me, you can drill education down somebody's throat. But if they're into buying a meme coin, they're just going to buy a meme coin. It's very, very difficult. So we need to obviously try to encourage and educate the space. And you guys are doing a great job there. And we need to understand that there's always going to be a percentage of those that are just not going to cut the mustard with the education. I think then we need to also have a standard which looks at projects. So, encourages people to look at GitHubs, token utilities, teams properly. So like a due diligence fact sheet, I think is very, very important. Who are the investors behind? I think we need to have a write-up on all of the investors in the last couple of years and what they've invested in and what's happened to those tokens a year or two later. There's some great guys online at the moment. I think Look On Chain and a few others are doing some brilliant jobs. because I wasn't very active on Twitter at all, like literally until the last 2 or 3 weeks. The FTX saga really sort of got me involved as well, right? So it brought me into the space, like, and I've just realized that just looking at Twitter from a new crypto guy who's not been that heavily involved in crypto Twitter before, I'm seeing patterns, and I think those can be redressed through not just education, but real like on-chain data, even looking at funds that have been mercenary style funding throughout, looking at exchange behavior. I think these things are very common, and somebody who can create a proper organized account with these type of activities, and then that gets really promoted, and of course more people doing the same. I think then you'll get people actually investing into proper good projects, and that liquidity is not being wasted because somebody investing $1,000 that's gone down to $10 or whatever, it's not just $990 lost. It's his friends, it's his family, it's his own personal motivation, it's his kind of resentment towards the space. But then also on the flip side, if you put that $1,000 into a really good project, without any speculation or anything that can give him a return, even at 5%, 10% a year, he'd now be at 1,100 with a very positive sentiment, with people around him also positive. So you kind of multiply that liquidity tenfold. You're not just losing a guy to a meme coin or a dog coin, you're losing much more than that. And I think that's what people are failing to see, essentially.
Yeah,
that's a really, really good point.
Yeah, the second and third order effects of a bad experience, whether that be a shoddy project or a shoddy UI, as you were alluding to earlier, or just a rubbish product, effectively, we probably don't see the second and third order effects of that. I think you're completely right there.
Exactly, and these bridge hacks and stuff, like even, the reason why we've got our own validator solution, we're looking at ways to sort of, further ensure that things need multiple signatures, distributed signatures before transactions move, etc. Some of the bridge hacks, if you look at them, it was just ridiculous, right? Like 600 million going missing like that. It's just, how do you recover from that? It's very difficult. But we'll get there, that's for sure, with the right people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Certainly will. Well, I think we will draw a line under it there. Thank you so much for coming on, Faisal. That was a great chat, man. Really enjoyed it.
Pleasure, guys.
Hearing about Entangle and your views for the space and everything was really useful.
No, thank you very much for your time, and let's catch up very, very soon for sure.
Sweet. Thank you very much, fellas.
See you later. Speak soon.
Speak soon.